The chirp of the robin outside my window usually means a good day. Today, it was an alarm bell, a shrill, feathered harbinger of doom. Because beneath that robin, parked with the kind of smug entitlement usually reserved for diplomats with get-out-of-jail-free bumper stickers, was Beatrice. Brenda Krumkowski's beige beast of burden, her minivan of monstrous self-importance, squarely blocking the damn Fireline road. Again. My coffee, usually a source of morning joy, tasted like ash. It's 8:02 a.m. The birds are indeed chirping like they don't have a single HOA bylaw to worry their tiny heads about, and Brenda's goddamn minivan is a monument to her oblivious tyranny, a beige blockade against all common sense and, more importantly, emergency vehicle access. Unbelievable, I mutter, sloshing coffee onto my favorite world's okayest handyman t-shirt. Not that Brenda would approve of the t-shirt. Last Tuesday, she'd informed me, via a laminated note tucked under my windshield wiper, because direct verbal communication is apparently too déclassé for HOA royalty, that my garden gnome, Bartholomew, was precisely 1 3/4 inches over the covenants, conditions, and restrictions approved height for decorative lawn ornaments. Bartholomew, mind you, is a gnome I inherited from my Grandpa Joe. A gnome who has seen things. Ugly things. Mostly involving Brenda and her tape measure. I remember the conversation with Chloe, my wife, my anchor in the stormy sea of suburban madness, after the Bartholomew incident. She measured him, Chloe, with a laser level and what looked suspiciously like crime scene calipers, I'd fumed, pacing our slightly too small kitchen. Chloe, bless her pragmatic heart, had just sipped her wine. Did you offer Bartholomew a tiny lawyer? It's not funny, she said, and I quote, Mr. Henderson, your fescue is also displaying a notable lack of uniformity. The bylaws are very clear on fescue uniformity. Did you ask her if the bylaws are clear on the existential dread of living next to someone who uses the word fescue in casual conversation? Chloe had replied, not missing a beat. I'd just grumbled into my own glass of wine. So is my desire for her to be abducted by actual regulation height gnomes. And now, Beatrice. The Fireline Road isn't just some quaint country lane, either. It's a narrow gravel track, but it's the only quick access for fire trucks or ambulances to the back cluster of houses in our development, including ours and old Mrs. Gable's, who has a heart condition and a penchant for dramatic sighs whenever Brenda is mentioned. We had a brush fire lick the back fence of the development last July, close enough that the smell of smoke and panic still lingers in my nostrils, if I think about it too hard. The fire trucks used that very road. Brenda, of course, had been on a cruise to study advanced synchronized swimming techniques at the time, so Beatrice had been safely tucked in her garage, probably getting a nice wax and buff. I peer out the window again. There she is, Brenda Krumkowski in the flesh, emerging from her front door. She's a vision in a pastel pink tracksuit that screams, I have too much time and not enough actual problems. In one hand, a delicate little watering can, presumably for the perfectly legal HOA-approved petunias, blooming aggressively in the flower bed beside her illegally parked minivan. She bestows upon Beatrice's hood a loving, lingering pat, as if knighting it for its service to obstruction. This requires direct action. A verbal volley, at least. I throw open the sash window, leaning out into the deceptively peaceful morning air. Brenda, I call, trying to keep the nascent volcano in my voice to a low simmer. Morning. Still think that fire access road is Beatrice's personal spa day location? Brenda doesn't even flinch. She turns slowly, with the regal air of a queen interrupted whilst communing with her prize-winning corgis. Her voice, when it comes, could etch glass. Good morning, Michael. And it's community land, as you well know. Beatrice is a valued member of this community, She's simply enjoying the invigorating morning air. Besides, she adds, with a little wave of her watering can that I'm sure is meant to be dismissive, who's it hurting for a few minutes? A few minutes. The phrase hangs in the air, buzzing like a trapped wasp. A few minutes? I retort, my voice ratcheting up a notch. My grip on the windowsill tightens. Yesterday, Brenda, a few minutes somehow stretched into a 4-hour strategic planning session you appeared to be holding with your collection of dashboard hula dancers inside the van. What if Mrs. Gable needs an ambulance back there? What if my house is on fire because your beige behemoth is playing roadblock? Brenda actually smiles then. It's a thin, unpleasant little curl of the lips, the kind of smile a cat gives a cornered mouse. Honestly, Michael, such hyperbole. You do worry far too much. If there's a genuine emergency, I'm quite sure I'd hear the sirens. I'd move. Eventually. Eventually. That's it. That's the word. The one little 7-letter syllable that pushes the plunger on the dynamite. My vision tinges a little bit red around the edges. The robin on the branch above Beatrice seems to sense the shift in atmospheric pressure and wisely takes flight. Right, I mutter, pulling back from the window, my voice dangerously quiet now. Eventually isn't good enough, Brenda. Not today it isn't. I storm into the kitchen, nearly tripping over Bartholomew, who I'd brought inside for his own safety after the great measurement edict. Chloe is at the table, scrolling through something on her tablet, a small, serene smile on her face. It vanishes when she sees mine. Let me guess, she says, her voice laced with the weary resignation of a woman who has seen this particular storm cloud gather many times before. Beatrice is holding court on public land again? Did Brenda try to issue a parking ticket to a passing butterfly this time? She said, eventually. I practically explode, pacing the length of our small kitchen, which is about 5 strides. Chloe, eventually. The unmitigated, chrome-plated, beige-painted gall of the woman? Chloe sighs, the kind of sigh that contains multitudes years of my HOA-related rants, a deep understanding of Brenda's unique brand of awfulness, and a premonition of impending paperwork. She takes a slow, deliberate sip of her coffee. Okay, Mikey, deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Remember what Dr. Levinson said about visualizing a calm blue ocean? My calm blue ocean just had a beige minivan park in the middle of it and declare itself a sovereign nation, Chloe. I'm done. I'm actually, certifiably, 100 proof done. Her eyes narrow slightly. Done how, Mikey? You're not going to fill Beatrice's tailpipe with expanding foam, are you? We talked about that. It's frowned upon, and probably a felony. Expanding foam is for amateurs, my love, I declare, a wild, reckless glint in my eye that I know she recognizes. I'm thinking bigger, much bigger, something with horsepower, something with a very large blade. Chloe's coffee cup stops halfway to her lips. Mikey, what are you? Don't you dare Ponderosa that minivan. Ponderosa was our ancient, rust-bucket pickup truck, a relic from my misguided gentleman farmer phase. I'd once used Ponderosa to gently nudge a fallen tree limb off our driveway during a storm, a maneuver that had also, regrettably, involved the obliteration of Mr. Henderson's, no relation, thankfully, prize-winning petunias, and his surprisingly fragile plastic mailbox shaped like a manatee. Ponderosa is retired to the great junkyard in the sky, my sweet, I say, already tapping furiously on my phone. I'm thinking an upgrade, a significant earth-moving upgrade. My fingers fly across the screen. Bulldozer rental, immediate USA. The search results pop up, and there it is, shining like a beacon of hope, or possibly a sign of imminent incarceration, Wrench Willie's wild rides and rentals. If it moves dirt or kids, we got it. The tagline alone inspires confidence. I jab the call button. The phone rings twice. Then a voice like gravel gargling with engine oil answers. Willie's. You break it, you buy it. What do you need? Willie, it's Mikey Henderson, over on Sycamore Lane. Listen, I've got a rather delicate landscaping situation that's just popped up. Needs some serious persuasion. You got anything assertive available right now? Like, right now? A phlegmy chuckle comes down the line. Henderson! Figured you'd be calling after that windstorm took out half your fence last month. Or was that the flamingos again? Anyway, landscaping, huh? Got the Lil Yellowjacket gassed up and ready to rumble. She's a compact dozer, but she's got a mean disposition, perfect for stubborn bushes. Or, you know, another gravelly chuckle. Whatever particular brand of botanical bastardy you're dealing with today. Stubborn is the word, Willie, I say, a grin spreading across my face. A very, very stubborn beige-colored weed. How fast can Yellowjacket get here? For you, Mikey? Cash on delivery, same as always? I can have my boy Jimmy drop her off in an hour. Maybe less if traffic ain't a bear. Just point him where you want the landscaping done. He ain't much for conversation, but he's a wizard with a flatbed. Excellent, Willie. The landscape in question is very clearly defined and obstructing a vital community artery. Say no more, Henderson, say no more. One Lil Yellowjacket coming right up. Just try to bring her back with all her bits still attached, eh? The next hour is a blur of nervous energy. I'm a caged tiger, pacing the confines of our living room, occasionally peering through the blinds like a spy in a low-budget movie. Chloe has abandoned her serene tablet scrolling and is now alternating between frantically searching legal defenses for temporary insanity caused by HOA and pointedly reading aloud from a pamphlet titled Constructive Conflict Resolution for Irritable Spouses. It says here, Mikey, she announces, peering over the top of the pamphlet, that active listening and expressing your feelings with I statements are highly effective. For example, Brenda, I feel frustrated when your minivan obstructs the Fireline because it makes me worry about emergency access. See? Simple. Non-bulldozery. I tried I statements, Chloe. My I statement was, I am rapidly losing the will to live in a society that allows this level of beige-based belligerence. Perhaps a different I statement is in order now, she mutters, turning back to her lawyer search. I keep my vigil at the window. Brenda, bless her cotton socks, is still out there. She's actually retrieved a small, foldable lawn chair from the cavernous interior of Beatrice, and a copy of what looks like Dominating Your Domain Monthly magazine. She's sunning herself, right beside her illegally parked vehicle, the queen upon her asphalt throne. The sheer, unadulterated, multi-layered audacity of it is almost performance art. My internal monologue is a fierce, chaotic battle. This is certifiably insane, Henderson. You're going to end up on the evening news, and not in a good way. But think of the sweet, sweet satisfaction, the silence where her smug justifications used to be. Chloe will murder you in your sleep, slowly, with a spork. But Brenda will finally learn, a lesson delivered via caterpillar. What if I accidentally hit the gas main? Or Mrs. Periwinkle's prize-winning poodle, Fifi, who has a habit of sunbathing near Brenda's azaleas? Details, Henderson, mere details. Focus on the objective. Liberate the Fireline. A low, guttural rumble breaks through my internal cacophony. My heart leaps. It's the sound of destiny. Or possibly just a very old flatbed truck with a muffler issue. A battered Ford flatbed, indeed, pulls up with a groan of protesting springs. At the wheel is Jimmy, a young man whose neck tattoos suggest he's not easily intimidated by suburban disputes. He expertly, almost balletically, unloads the Lil Yellow Jacket. It's smaller than I'd mentally pictured. Not one of those building-eating behemoths, but definitely, unequivocally yellow. And it definitely has a massive, gleaming steel blade on the front that looks like it could shave a mountain. Jimmy ambles over, wiping his hands on an oily rag. He has a friendly, gap-toothed grin and an aura of someone who has delivered unusual items to unusual people many times before. Mr. Henderson?" he asks, though it's pretty clear I'm the only one on the street looking like I'm expecting a delivery of righteous fury on tracks. "Willie said you had some aggressive gardening planned. She's all fueled up. Keys are in it. Simple controls, forward, back, blade up, blade down. Just don't take her swimming. Willie gets real ornery when they come back smelling like pond scum." I try for a casual, non-felonious demeanor. "Perfect, Jimmy, thanks. Just some overgrown roots. Very, very stubborn, deeply embedded roots I need to excavate." Jimmy grins, revealing a surprising gold tooth amongst the regular ones. "Ain't no root Yellow Jacket can't handle, boss. Have a blast. Willie says the first hour's on him if you bring it back clean." He gives a little salute, climbs back into his truck, and rumbles off, leaving me alone with my destiny. It's me, Yellow Jacket, and Beatrice. And Brenda, still oblivious, seemingly engrossed in an article titled "Top 10 Ways to Ensure Bylaw Compliance Through Sheer, Unrelenting Annoyance." The universe, I swear, has a twisted sense of humor. I glance at my watch. 8:59 a.m. "Okay, Brenda," I whisper, my hand already reaching for Yellow Jacket's open cab door, a strange, exhilarating calm settling over me. "You've had your hour of infamy. My 3 minutes start. Now." Climbing into Yellow Jacket's worn vinyl seat is like stepping into another world. It smells of honest diesel, hot metal, and the faint, lingering aroma of questionable decisions made by previous renters. The controls, despite Jimmy's assurances of simplicity, look like something cobbled together by a mad scientist in a garden shed. There's a big lever that probably means a go, another that probably means a stop before you hit something expensive, and a third, more enticing lever with a faded picture of a blade digging into the earth. Good enough for government work, or, in this case, vigilante road clearance. "Okay, Bessie," I say, patting Yellow Jacket's dusty dashboard. "No, not Bessie. This machine has more spirit." "Okay, Yellow Jacket," I correct myself. "Let's dance with Beatrice." I turn the key. Yellow Jacket sputters, lets out a cough that sounds suspiciously like a derisive chuckle, then roars to life with a shudder that vibrates right up my spine. It's surprisingly loud. Gloriously, wonderfully, attention-grabbingly loud. Brenda Krumkowski jumps like she's been goosed by a ghost. Her "Dominating Your Domain" monthly goes flying, pages fluttering like startled doves. Her head whips around, designer sunglasses askew, her perfectly coiffed helmet of hair looking slightly windswept by the sheer audacity of the noise. "Michael Henderson!" she screeches, her voice somehow cutting through Yellow Jacket's mechanical bellow. "What in the Sam Hill is that contraption? Turn that dreadful racket off this instant. Some of us are trying to enjoy a peaceful morning and read important literature." I offer her a jaunty two-finger salute, the kind you see cowboys give in old westerns right before they ride off to do something incredibly stupid but undeniably heroic. Then, with a deep breath that tastes of impending freedom, and possibly a lengthy court battle, I push the big lever firmly forward. Yellow Jacket lurches, tracks biting into the asphalt of my driveway. Brenda's eyes, visible now that her sunglasses are perched precariously on her head, transition with remarkable speed from irritated, to confused, to a dawning, horrified comprehension that I can only describe as, "Oh dear Lord, he wouldn't actually dare, would he?" "Michael, stop! Are you insane?" she shrieks, scrambling out of her foldable lawn chair, which promptly collapses behind her like a dying flamingo. "That's my Beatrice, my baby, my pride and joy, don't you touch her!" She starts waving her arms, a frantic, pastel-clad windmill of indignation. My internal monologue has narrowed to a single, beautiful word, repeated on an epic orchestral loop. Finally, finally, finally. The approach is slow, deliberate. I'm not aiming for a Hollywood crash scene. I'm aiming for assertive relocation. Aggressive rezoning, if you will. Yellow Jacket feels like an extension of my own righteous fury, a tracked vehicle of vengeance. The gleaming steel blade makes contact with Beatrice's pristine beige rear bumper. There's a soft, almost apologetic thunk, immediately followed by a gut-wrenching screech of protesting metal and plastic. I push the lever a little further. Beatrice groans, a sound like a dying walrus. Yellow Jacket, bless her mechanical heart, doesn't even flinch. This is what she was born for. The sounds are a symphony of suburban destruction, the crunching of fiberglass, the shattering of what I sincerely hope is the passenger side window. Safety first, even in rage. The tortured shriek of high-quality radial tires being dragged unwillingly sideways across asphalt. I'm carefully, almost surgically, if surgery involved a multi-ton bulldozer, angling Beatrice off the Fireline and onto the very edge of Brenda's own meticulously manicured, award-winning, and I'm willing to bet, HOA bylaw compliant to the millimeter, front lawn. Perhaps just slightly into her prize-winning azalea bushes, the ones she once told Mrs. Periwinkle were genetically superior to all other neighborhood azaleas. Brenda is now a blur of flailing limbs and incoherent shrieking. It's like watching a nature documentary about a very angry, very territorial, pastel-clad banshee whose sacred offering to the gods of beige has just been desecrated. "Stop it, you uncivilized brute, you monster, you villainous vandal!" Her voice cracks on vandal. "I'll sue you into the next millennium. I'll have you jailed. I'll tell the HOA newsletter about your unapproved shed paint and the fact your recycling bin was 3 inches too close to the curb last Thursday." I bring Yellow Jacket to a smooth, powerful halt. Beatrice, or what's left of her, is now a very sad, very crinkled, very beige heap, half on Brenda's perfect grass, half embedded in the genetically superior azaleas. Most importantly, she is completely, utterly, and beautifully clear of the Fireline road. I survey my handiwork. It's a masterpiece of malicious compliance, a testament to the power of one man pushed too far by beige bureaucracy. I cut Yellow Jacket's engine back to a triumphant, throbbing idle. "Fireline's clear, Brenda," I shout, my voice hoarse but victorious. "Just ensuring community safety and bylaw adherence. You're welcome." The silence that follows Yellow Jacket's eventual shutdown is deafening, broken only by Brenda's strangled gasps and the distant, almost polite chirping of a confused sparrow. Then, slowly, like meerkats emerging after a predator scare, curtains begin to twitch, windows slide open, faces pale and stunned appear. Old Man Hemlock, from directly across the street, a man whose ongoing feud with Brenda over the strategic placement of his bird feeder has been the stuff of HOA legend for years, is standing on his porch. He has a cup of coffee in one hand. He takes a slow sip, surveys the scene. The mangled minivan, the triumphant Yellow Jacket. Brenda looking like she's about to spontaneously combust. And then, with the gravity of a Roman emperor at the Colosseum, gives me a slow, deliberate, magnificent thumbs up. Mrs. Gable, whose house is at the very end of the Fireline and whose continued existence might one day depend on its unimpeded access, peeks out from behind her lace curtains. There's a look of stunned, almost tearful gratitude on her ancient face. She blows me a discreet kiss. My phone buzzes violently in my pocket. It's Chloe. The caller ID picture is her looking exceptionally stern, the one she uses when I've tried to fix the plumbing with duct tape and optimism. I take a deep breath and answer, trying for a breezy, mission-accomplished tone. Honey, guess what? The Fireline is now exceptionally passable. You could land a small Cessna on it, if you were so inclined. Chloe's voice, when it comes, is dangerously calm, the kind of calm that precedes a Category 5 hurricane. Michael, Ignatius, Henderson. I just received a text message from Mrs. Periwinkle 3 doors down. It says, and I quote, "Dearest Chloe, I regret to inform you that your husband appears to have finally and spectacularly snapped. There is a bright yellow bulldozer, what appears to be the shredded remains of a minivan, and a great many azalea parts currently adorning Brenda Krumkowski's front lawn. Also, Brenda's face is a rather alarming shade of purple." Explain, slowly. And try to use small words, Michael, because my capacity for complex thought is currently being eroded by sheer, unadulterated disbelief. Well, honey, I begin, trying to sound reasonable. Purple is a bit of an exaggeration. More of a mottled mauve, really. And the petunias, to be fair, were innocent bystanders. Collateral damage in the great liberation of the Fireline. It was a matter of public safety. A deep sigh travels through the phone lines, a sigh that seems to carry the weight of all our marital vows, especially the for better or for worse part, which is clearly getting a workout today. "I'm calling Frank," she says, her voice flat. "Our lawyer, Mikey. Not Frank, your poker buddy from the Moose Lodge who thinks a legal advice is something you find printed on the back of a beer coaster." Click. She hangs up. Meanwhile, Brenda, having apparently exhausted her repertoire of on-the-spot shrieks, is now on her own phone, her voice hitting octaves previously thought to be achievable only by dogs listening to particularly high-frequency whistles and certain species of particularly distressed bats. "Police! Yes, officer, police!" she wails into the receiver. "A yellow tank. A mechanical monstrosity. He's a terrorist. A suburban terrorist with a vendetta against responsibly parked minivans. Send the SWAT team, send the National Guard, and send a very, very good detailer. Beatrice has a scratch, several scratches, and a missing door." The distant, mournful wail of sirens begins to slice through the morning air. They're getting closer. Way too quickly for my long-term freedom prospects, but also, in a strange way, about damn time. The cavalry is arriving, though I have a sneaking suspicion they're not here to award me a medal for civic beautification. I calmly, almost reverently, switch off Yellow Jacket's engine. The sudden, profound silence is almost as shocking as the earlier cacophony had been. I take a deep breath. It smells like victory, and hot diesel, and possibly impending bankruptcy and a lengthy period of court-mandated apologizing. 2 sleek black and white patrol cars, lights flashing with an almost festive cheerfulness, squeal to a halt at the end of my driveway. Officer Ramirez, young, bright-eyed, looking like he just stepped off a police academy recruitment poster and still believes in the inherent goodness of humanity, gets out of the first car. Sergeant Miller, older, world-weary, with a face that looks like it's been eroded by decades of dealing with other people's bad decisions, emerges more slowly from the second. Their faces, as they take in the entire tableau me, standing beside my bright yellow chariot. Yellow Jacket, looking innocently dusty. The artistically rearranged and significantly more compact former minivan known as Beatrice, and Brenda, who is now doing an interpretive dance of pure, unadulterated rage near her violated azaleas, are frankly worth the price of admission. which I suspect is going to be very, very high. Sarge Miller ambles over first, his thumbs hooked in his duty belt, his gaze sweeping over Beatrice like a particularly unimpressed art critic appraising a controversial sculpture. "Well now," he drawls, his voice a gravelly baritone that has clearly delivered bad news many times. "Haven't seen one of these particular kerfuffles since Henderson's kid, no relation, I presume. Tried to parallel park his daddy's combine harvester down on Main Street during the Corn Festival back in '98. Made a real mess of the mayor's prize-winning petunias, as I recall. You Henderson's boy?" I manage a weak smile, trying for a polite, non-threatening tone that doesn't quite scream, "I just bulldozed my neighbor's car." "That was my cousin, Vinny Sarge. Different branch of the family tree, significantly less mechanically inclined, shall we say. I'm Michael Henderson, and this," I gesture vaguely towards the scene of the crime, "was just a little, aggressive property maintenance, a proactive approach to ensuring public safety. Officer Ramirez, bless his by-the-book heart, has already flipped open his official police notepad, pen poised like a hummingbird over a particularly juicy flower. "Sir," he begins, his voice crisp and official, "could you define aggressive property maintenance for the official record? Does it typically involve a Caterpillar D4, or forgive me, whatever this bright yellow beast of burden is?" "It's a Lil Yellow Jacket, officer," I clarify helpfully. "Compact, but surprisingly persuasive. And when the property in question is a flagrantly, repeatedly, and unapologetically illegally parked vehicle, posing a consistent and demonstrable public safety hazard on a designated emergency access route, despite numerous verbal and written warnings, then yes, officer, sometimes the situation requires a more robust and direct approach to resolution. Brenda, who has apparently caught her second wind, or possibly her 17th, charges forward like a small, furious rhinoceros, only to be gently but firmly intercepted by Officer Ramirez's outstretched arm. "He's lying through his teeth, officer. He's a menace to society, a bulldozing barbarian. He targeted Beatrice out of pure malice. She was a 2019 model, low mileage, immaculate interior until he violated her with that yellow implement of destruction and hate." Her voice cracks on hate. Sarge Miller, without even glancing in Brenda's direction, addresses me again, one eyebrow raised so high it's practically vacationing in his hairline. "Ma'am, we'll get your statement in due course," he says, his voice still deceptively mild. "Right now I'm more interested in Mr. Henderson's precise definition of numerous warnings. Did any of these warnings involve, say, a 30-ton piece of tracked earth-moving equipment giving a friendly heads-up?" "No, Sarge," I admit. "The warnings were more traditional, polite conversation which was met with condescension. Formal HOA complaints, which she, as the head of the relevant committee, summarily dismissed as frivolous and lacking in community spirit. And, of course, a deep, abiding, and rapidly escalating sense of frustration on my part. The Yellow Jacket," I conclude, with a shrug that I hope conveys helpless inevitability rather than gleeful premeditation, was essentially Plan B, or possibly Plan G. I confess, I lost count somewhere around Plan D, which involved a very large flock of highly trained pigeons. The gathered neighbors are now starting to offer their own unsolicited testimonies from a respectful but clearly fascinated distance. Phones are out. Videos are undoubtedly being recorded. I'm pretty sure I'm already a local meme, probably captioned "Beige Against the Machine." Mr. Grumbles, a perpetually disgruntled retiree from down the street, pipes up, his voice quavering with ancient resentments. "She had it comin', I tell ya. Parks that monstrosity there all the blessed time. Blocks the view of my prize-winning gnomes. About time someone did something concrete, or, Dozer-shaped." Miss Prudence proper, from the house with the immaculate rose bushes and the disapproving cat, gasps audibly. It was horrifying. Such unbridled aggression. This neighborhood is simply going to the dogs. The absolute barbarity of it all. Sarge Miller just sighs. A long, slow exhalation that seems to carry the weight of every suburban squabble he's ever had to mediate. All right, folks. Let's try to maintain some semblance of order here. Ramirez, why don't you start getting Mrs. Krumkowski's official non-interpretive dance statement? Mr. Henderson, you and I are going to have a little chat. Preferably somewhere that doesn't involve active heavy machinery or overly excited garden gnomes. Sarge Miller leads me a little way down the driveway, away from the main circus. Ramirez, looking like a rookie gladiator thrown to a particularly vocal lion, is attempting to get a coherent statement from Brenda, who is now cycling rapidly through tears, outrage, and a surprisingly detailed inventory of Beatrice's optional extras, including the custom-installed diamond-tufted seat covers, which are now presumably somewhat less tufted. "Look, Mr. Henderson," Sarge begins, his voice losing some of its earlier drawl and taking on a more serious, albeit still weary, tone. "I get it, I really do. HOAs, problem neighbors, people who think parking regulations are just gentle suggestions. I've seen my share in 30 years on the force. Lord knows I've got a neighbor who thinks his prize-winning rooster has a God-given right to serenade the entire block at 4 a.m. But there are channels, you understand? Processes. Demolishing private vehicles with rented construction equipment isn't usually on the officially approved list of conflict resolution techniques." "I tried the channels, Sarge," I say, my voice earnest. "I swear I did. Letters to the HOA, which Brenda probably used as kindling. Attended those soul-destroying HOA meetings where they debate the optimal beige for mailbox posts for 3 hours. Polite requests to her face, which were met with lectures on her rights to enjoy community property. This wasn't just about a parking spot, Sarge. That Fireline. What if my house was on fire? Or old Mrs. Gable, bless her, needed an ambulance in a hurry? This was a genuine safety issue, repeatedly ignored. Officer Ramirez, having apparently managed to extract some information from Brenda, or perhaps just needing a break from the sheer intensity of her Krumkowski-ness, rejoins us, flipping through his notepad. "Sir," he says to me, "Mrs. Krumkowski is claiming, among other things, assault with a deadly bulldozer, felony destruction of property valued at, and I quote, 'more than your entire dilapidated house, you ruffian. Reckless endangerment, operating machinery without a license, though I'm not sure that one applies to private rentals for landscaping, and my personal favorite, infliction of severe emotional distress upon a beloved family vehicle.' She's got quite a list." "Assault?" I exclaim, genuinely surprised. "I specifically aimed for the inanimate minivan, and I gave it fair warning. Well, in my head, I gave it very clear, unambiguous warnings. And Yellow Jacket here isn't deadly. She's just enthusiastic." Chloe arrives then, looking like she's aged 10 years in the last hour, but also radiating a strange, stressed-out competence. She's holding a small, crisp business card in her hand like a talisman. "Mikey," she says, her voice low and dangerous, like a rattlesnake giving its final warning. She hands me the card. "Frank is on his way," he said, and I quote, "Oh, it's Mikey Henderson. What architectural marvel or beloved neighborhood fixture did he inadvertently or possibly advertently demolish this time?" "Apparently, my darling, you have something of a reputation with our legal counsel." I glance at the card. Franklin J. Peabody, attorney at law, specializing in hope, despair, and unfortunate incidents involving poor impulse control. A reputation for decisive action in the face of bureaucratic inertia? I offer weakly. Chloe gives me a look that could freeze lava. A reputation for requiring industrial strength, financially ruinous legal intervention, you mean? She turns to Sarge Miller, forcing a smile that looks painful. "Officer, Sergeant, My husband is usually a very calm, reasonable man. He collects stamps. He enjoys bird watching. He makes a surprisingly good sourdough. He just has very, very strong and occasionally poorly expressed feelings about emergency vehicle access and the flagrant abuse of community property. Sarge Miller actually cracks a smile then, a faint, almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of his mouth. But a smile nonetheless. "Ma'am," he says to Chloe, "in my experience, it's always the quiet ones. The stamp collectors, the bird watchers, the sourdough bakers. Or," he adds, with a pointed glance at me, "the ones with sudden, unrestricted access to bulldozers." The next order of business is the fate of Yellow Jacket. She's now technically part of a crime scene, or at least a very unusual municipal disturbance. Sarge Miller radios for a heavy-duty tow truck capable of handling, well, a bulldozer. Meanwhile, with a sigh that seems to deflate my entire ribcage, I dial Wrench Willie. "Willie?" I say, when he finally answers after a series of phlegmy coughs that might, in another context, be interpreted as suppressed laughter. "Mikey Henderson again. Bit of an update on the stubborn root situation. Heard a bit of a rumble on the police scanner a while back, Henderson," Willie crackles. "Sounded like a root the size of a Buick, maybe two. You need a tow for Yellow Jacket? Or should I send Jimmy over with a good alibi and a change of clothes for you?" "Both, eventually, I suspect," I say glumly. "For now, the local constabulary requires her presence elsewhere. Impound Yard, I think. Can you come get her? She might need a police escort home, and possibly a thorough decontamination shower. She's been uncomfortably close to a Karen for several hours now." "Impound, eh?" Willie muses. "That's extra, you know? Hazard pay. And I'm gonna need a notarized statement from you, Henderson, verifying that Yellow Jacket was an unwilling participant in this, vigorous horticultural dispute. Don't want her getting a bad rep, see? She's sensitive." Wrench Willie arrives a short while later in his own beat-up, rust-colored pickup, which looks like it might have personally participated in several demolition derbies. He surveys the scene. Beatrice's mangled corpse, Yellow Jacket looking dusty but defiant, Brenda still gesticulating wildly at Officer Ramirez, with an air of quiet, professional interest, like a connoisseur appraising a particularly bold piece of performance art. "Nice form on the push there, Henderson," he says to me under his breath, while Sarge Miller is distracted by another neighbor offering a dramatic and likely fictional eyewitness account. "Kept it mostly clean. Avoided the main flower beds, mostly. She get good traction on that minivan's chassis?" "Like a hot knife through particularly entitled beige-colored butter, Willie," I confirm, a small spark of pride igniting amidst the ashes of my afternoon. Then comes Sal Scapelli, proprietor of Sal's Totaled Towing and Auto Autopsies, with his gleaming, heavy-duty flatbed rig, lights flashing with a cheerful, almost ghoulish enthusiasm. Sal is a large, jovial man with a booming laugh and a genuine, almost pathological fascination with vehicular destruction. He beams when he sees Beatrice. "Whoa ho ho," Sal bellows, slapping his thigh with delight. "Now that's a pancake, a genuine grade-A minivan frittata. Haven't seen one squished this artfully since that runaway cement mixer had a rather passionate disagreement with a row of parked smart cars down on Elm Street. What'd you use for this masterpiece, pal? A meteor? A tactical strike from a low-orbiting satellite?" "A Lil Yellow Jacket, Sal," I say, trying to match his cheerfulness, though mine is tinged with a distinct note of impending legal doom. "She's compact, but she's got a lot of heart, and a very effective blade." Sal is already snapping photos with his phone, a wide, appreciative grin plastered across his face. "This is gold, pure gold, going straight onto the company Instagram. Hashtags, let's see, #minivan mayhem, #beige begone, #Dozer don't care, #HOA wars. You mind, pal? This is prime advertising material. Knock yourself out, Sal, I say, with a wave of my hand. Might as well get some social media likes out of this whole debacle. I'm pretty sure I'm not getting any friendly waves from Brenda Krumkowski for the foreseeable future. The process of extricating Beatrice from Brenda's genetically superior azaleas and onto Sal's flatbed is a tragicomedy in itself, involving much groaning of tortured metal, the snapping of formerly prize-winning branches, and a fresh volley of high-pitched indignation from Brenda, who seems to be critiquing Sal's winching technique with the same fervor she usually reserves for improperly sorted recycling. Eventually, after what feels like several geological epochs, the statements are taken, the wreckage is cleared, mostly. Yellow Jacket is ignominiously towed away by a very large truck under police escort, Willie winking at me as she departed. And I'm finally allowed to retreat into the relative sanity of my own house. Assuming, of course, that I haven't actually been arrested on the spot. Sarge Miller, to his credit, seems to be enjoying the unfolding human and vehicular drama too much to rush the paperwork. He'd merely said, with another one of those almost smiles, "Mr. Henderson, I suspect we'll be in touch. Don't, rent any more earth-moving equipment for a while, okay?" Chloe is waiting for me in the kitchen. A fresh pot of coffee brewing, industrial strength by the smell of it, and a look on her face that's a complex cocktail of exasperation, disbelief, and a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of something that might be grudging admiration, or possibly just gas. "So," she says, pouring me a mug of coffee that's blacker than my future legal prospects. "Bulldozer. That's how we're officially solving neighborhood disputes now, is it? What's on the agenda for tomorrow? A strategic drone strike on Mr. Grumble's constantly barking chihuahua? A small, localized EMP to disable Brenda's new noise-canceling headphones so she can finally hear the cries of the oppressed?" "It felt entirely appropriate at the time," I protest, sinking into a kitchen chair that suddenly feels very flimsy. "You didn't see her face, Chloe. The sheer, unadulterated, platinum-plated entitlement. It was a cry for mechanical intervention." "I'm going to see a lawyer's bill, Mikey," Chloe says, her voice flat. "A very large, very itemized lawyer's bill. That's what I'm going to see. And probably your face on the 10 o'clock news under the headline, 'Dozer Desperado Strikes Suburban Beige.'" As if on cue, my phone, which had been mercifully silent during the on-scene chaos, starts to explode. It's like a digital hornet's nest has been kicked. First, a voicemail from Howard Pratchett, the perpetually nervous and Brenda browbeaten HOA president. "Michael, Howard Pratchett here. Just calling because, well, there seems to be some online chatter?" And a rather alarming photo circulating on the Neighborhood Watch unofficial forum involving what appears to be a yellow construction vehicle, and Mrs. Krumkowski's minivan in a state of, significant distress. Brenda's also called an emergency HOA Zoom meeting for this evening. She's using a lot of exclamation points and rather aggressive capital letters in her email invitation. "Please tell me you didn't, bulldoze anything significant, Michael, or anyone." Then, a text message from my neighbor, Jim, the one who lives 2 doors down, and who I'd once helped jumpstart his ancient Volvo in the pouring rain. "Dude, saw the whole thing from my upstairs window, absolutely, positively legendary. Beers on me for life. Don't tell my wife I said that. She's already lighting candles for your immortal soul and/or bail fund." Then, an email notification from the Sycamore Lane Unofficial Neighborhood Watch and Gossip Forum. Subject: "Holy moly! You guys are not going to believe what Henderson just did to Brenda's minivan." 147 replies, and climbing rapidly. Chloe peers over my shoulder, reading the messages with a mixture of horror and something that looks suspiciously like a suppressed giggle. "Well, congratulations, sweetie," she says finally, pouring herself another coffee. You're a folk hero, a felon, and the subject of at least 3 viral internet threads, all before lunch. It's a new personal best, even for you. At least the Fireline is clear, I say, trying to find a silver lining in the rapidly approaching storm cloud of legal and financial ruin. That's the important thing, right? Public safety above all? Chloe raises a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Is that going to be your official defense in court, Davy Crockett? I did it for the children, Your Honor, and for unimpeded emergency vehicle access to Mrs. Gable's prize-winning begonias. Before I can formulate a suitably witty or even remotely coherent reply, my phone rings again. This time, the caller ID simply says, Franklin J. Peabody, ESQ. Showtime. The meeting with Franklin J. Peabody, Esquire, takes place in his surprisingly plush office, which smells faintly of old books, expensive leather, and the lingering ghosts of 1,000 desperate legal battles. Frank is a portly man in his late 50s, with a kind, cherubic smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes, which are sharp, assessing, and have clearly seen the very worst and most absurd of suburban disputes. He greets me with a warm handshake and a sigh that seems to carry the accumulated weariness of the entire legal profession. Michael, he says, gesturing me towards a leather armchair that probably costs more than my car, the one that isn't currently an impounded piece of evidence. We meet again. Last time, if memory serves, it was the rather unfortunate Great Flamingo War of '22, involving Mrs. Henderson's prize collection of vintage plastic lawn birds and Mr. Abernathy's somewhat overzealous interpretation of the nuisance wildlife bylaw. This, Michael, is a new and rather spectacular level of neighborhood negotiation. Frank, she was parked on a designated Fireline, I burst out, unable to contain my righteous indignation any longer. There are photographs, a documented history of her transgressions. She's a menace to public safety, a beige-colored blight on our otherwise tranquil suburban existence. Frank holds up a placating hand, his cherubic smile unwavering. I understand your frustrations, Michael. I truly do. And vehicular provocation resulting in justifiable mechanical remediation is a fascinating, if not entirely recognized, legal concept that we can certainly explore with gusto. However, he pauses, leaning forward and folding his hands temperatura on his expansive mahogany desk. The district attorney's office, based on the preliminary police report and Mrs. Krumkowski's rather florid statement, is currently leaning towards less nuanced charges, specifically felony destruction of private property, unauthorized operation of heavy earth-moving machinery in a residential zone with clear intent to cause minivan-related mayhem, and possibly, depending on how creative the DA's intern is feeling, aggravated azalea abuse. I deflate slightly. Oh, well, when you put it like that, it does sound a tad excessive. Indeed, Frank says, a twinkle in his eye. Now tell me everything, from the beginning. And please, Michael, try to refrain from using the phrase-righteous bulldozer of justice more than, say, twice. And so I recount the saga of Brenda, Beatrice, and the Lil Yellow Jacket. Frank listens patiently, occasionally jotting down a note on a yellow legal pad, his expression unreadable. Chloe, who has accompanied me for moral support, and to ensure I don't try to pay Frank in gently used garden gnomes, sits beside me, occasionally interjecting with a dry comment or a clarifying detail, mostly about my pre-existing tendencies towards enthusiastic problem-solving. When I'm finished, Frank leans back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Remarkable, he says finally. Truly remarkable. In all my years, Michael, I've handled disputes over barking dogs, encroaching tree roots, overly aggressive squirrels, and the precise shade of beige permissible for exterior window trim. But never, until today, have I encountered a case involving the preemptive, bulldozer-assisted decommissioning of a problematic minivan. You, my dear boy, are a pioneer." Just then, Frank's assistant buzzes him on the intercom. "Mr. Peabody, there's a Fire Chief Brody on line 1 for a Mr. Henderson. He says it's unofficial, but potentially helpful." My eyebrows shoot up. Fire Chief Brody? I vaguely know him. He'd given a talk at the last HOA meeting about wildfire preparedness. A talk Brenda had tried to interrupt multiple times to ask if the fire department had any regulations regarding the height of decorative bird baths. Frank raises an eyebrow at me, then nods to his assistant. "Put him through, Marjorie." He picks up the phone. "Chief Brody? Franklin Peabody here. Counsel for Michael Henderson? Yes. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. You have copies of those warnings? Excellent. No, entirely unofficial. I understand completely. Yes, Sarge Miller is an old friend, a fine officer. Thank you, Chief. This is illuminating." He hangs up, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "Well, Michael," he says, "it appears you may have an unintentional and entirely unofficial ally in the fire department. It seems Chief Brody and his crews have been less than thrilled with Mrs. Krumkowski's creative parking solutions on that particular fire line for quite some time. He mentioned something about official warnings issued to the HOA regarding that specific obstruction, warnings which it appears may have been conveniently misfiled by someone on the Safety and Aesthetic Enhancement Committee." He pauses, letting the implication hang in the air. "Someone, perhaps, who is also the aggrieved owner of a recently remodeled minivan." Chloe, bless her stress-fueled, hyper-focused heart, suddenly gasps. She's been furiously scrolling through a PDF of the HOA covenants, conditions and restrictions on her tablet, a document so dense and mind-numbing it's rumored to have been written by ancient lawyers as a form of torture. "Frank, Mikey!" she exclaims, jabbing a finger at her screen. "Listen to this. Article 9, Section C, subsection IV, paragraph B. I found it. It says, and I quote, 'In instances of persistent and documented obstruction of designated emergency access routes vital for community safety, the Homeowners Association, or its designated agents, retains the right to authorize and undertake immediate removal of said obstructing vehicle by any and all means deemed necessary and appropriate, following no fewer than 2 documented warnings issued to the vehicle owner or responsible party.'" She looks up, triumphant. "Mikey, your emails to the HOA, the ones Brenda ignored, those are your documented warnings, and Brenda, by repeatedly parking Beatrice there, was acting as an agent of her own obstruction, and the phrase, 'any and all means deemed necessary and appropriate.' Frank, is that as beautifully, wonderfully vague as it sounds?" Frank Peabody's cherubic smile widens into a full-blown grin. He looks like a cat who has not only found the canary, but also the key to the creamery. "Michael," he says, leaning back and chuckling, "you may indeed be an impulsive, reckless, bulldozer-renting idiot. But your wife, my dear boy, is an absolute, unmitigated legal genius. This doesn't get you off scot-free, not by a long shot. But it does give us a rather large and surprisingly sturdy crowbar to wedge into the prosecution's case." Word of Fire Chief Brody's unofficial comments and Chloe's miraculous discovery of the bulldozer bylaw, as it quickly becomes known in neighborhood lore, spreads through Sycamore Lane like wildfire. Pun entirely intended. I'm still in a heap of legal trouble, naturally. Any and all means necessary probably doesn't explicitly include a Lil Yellow Jacket in most legal interpretations. But public opinion, at least amongst the non-Brenda-aligned factions of the neighborhood, swings massively in my favor. I become something of a local legend. Bulldozer Mikey, they call me. Sometimes the Beige Avenger. I start getting anonymous gifts left on my porch. A perfectly preserved Tonka bulldozer from the 1970s, a six-pack of a craft beer called Road Rager IPA. A surprisingly well-done charcoal sketch of Yellow Jacket standing triumphantly over a crumpled beige minivan. Mrs. Gable even bakes me a pie apple, her specialty, with a little pastry bee, for bulldozer, I assume, not Brenda, on top. Brenda Krumkowski, on the other hand, becomes the neighborhood pariah. People visibly cross the street to avoid her. Her circle of HOA sycophants shrinks dramatically. Her new rental car, a tiny, terrified-looking subcompact that seems to apologize for its own existence, is parked with almost neurotic precision inside her garage at all times. I occasionally see her glaring at me from behind her pristine living room window, her face a mask of simmering resentment. It's a definite improvement. The Fireline road, it should be noted, remains conspicuously, beautifully, blessedly clear. No one dares park there now, not even a bicycle. The encounter at the local hardware store becomes a regular occurrence. I'm in aisle 7, looking for a specific type of widget for a leaky faucet, because my life, alas, cannot be all bulldozers and glory, when a young guy with a name tag reading Chad Assistant Manager of Awesome approaches me, eyes wide. "Dude, you're him, right? You're Bulldozer Mikey. That was so epic, man. My band is writing a song about it. Listen," he leans in conspiratorially. "My mother-in-law, right?" She parks her ancient Buick land yacht across my driveway all the time, blocks me in for hours. "You do, like, private consultations? Off the books?" I sigh, running a hand through my hair. "Chad, my friend, as much as I appreciate the artistic inspiration, I strongly advise against following in my particular treadmarks. My legal fees are currently rivaling the GDP of a small island nation. Try a strongly worded letter, perhaps in a particularly aggressive font. Comic Sans has its merits, I'm told." Eventually, after weeks of legal wrangling, impassioned depositions from neighbors about Brenda's reign of beige terror, and Franklin J. Peabody's masterful deployment of both the bulldozer bylaw and Fire Chief Brody's unofficial but very pointed concerns, the DA's office, possibly just to make the whole bizarre circus go away, offers a plea bargain. I plead guilty to a significantly lesser charge: reckless endangerment of an unoccupied, illegally parked beige minivan with aggravating azalea complications. It's still a mouthful, but it beats felony property destruction. The sentence? A hefty fine, which Chloe immediately earmarks from our fancy European vacation that clearly isn't happening anymore fund. 200 hours of community service, specifically, and with a delicious irony that is not lost on anyone, helping the City Parks Department clear overgrown public access paths and hiking trails, and mandatory attendance at a 12-session anger rechanneling through expressive macrame workshop. Apparently, knot tying is very therapeutic. A few weeks later, I'm heading out for my first day of community service, armed not with a bulldozer, but with a decidedly less intimidating pair of pruning shears and a bright orange safety vest that does nothing for my complexion. Chloe sees me off at the door. "Got your safety goggles, champ?" she asks, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "Your reflective vest? Your solemn, notarized vow not to operate any piece of machinery larger than a battery-operated leaf blower without explicit, written spousal consent and a 3-day cooling-off period?" "Yes, dear," I say, leaning in to kiss her. "All present and accounted for, though that macrame class is actually giving me some rather interesting ideas. You can make some surprisingly strong and intricate rope designs with the right kind of hemp cord." Chloe swats me playfully with a dish towel. "Out! Go make the world a slightly less obstructed and overgrown place, Bulldozer Mikey. And try not to accidentally liberate any more public thoroughfares with a weed whacker, okay?" As I walk down the driveway, shears in hand, I glance towards the Fireline road. It's pristine, empty, beautifully, wonderfully beige-free. Across the street, Old Man Hemlock, out for his morning constitutional, raises his coffee cup in a silent, appreciative toast. Maybe, just maybe, it was all worth it. I arrive at the designated park, meet my community service supervisor, a cheerful, no-nonsense woman named Barb, who seems entirely unfazed by my minivan mauler reputation, and get to work clearing thorny blackberry bushes from a neglected footpath. It's hard work, sweaty work, but there's a certain satisfaction to it, a direct, uncomplicated sense of accomplishment. An hour later, during a water break, Barb sidles up to me. "So," she says, eyeing me with a curious glint in her eye, "heard you had a bit of a disagreement with a neighbor's parking habits." I wince. "You could say that, Barb. It involved some unorthodox methods of vehicle relocation." Barb chuckles. "Yeah, well, my brother-in-law lives over on Sycamore. He sent me the video. Pretty impressive blade work, Henderson. For an amateur." She takes a swig of water. "Tell me," she says, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "that Lil Yellow Jacket, does it come with an attachment for particularly stubborn tree stumps? Asking for a friend, of course." I can't help but laugh. It seems my reputation, and Yellow Jacket's, precedes me. "Strictly for botanical purposes, Barb," I say, winking. "Very, very stubborn botanical purposes." As I get back to wrestling with a particularly tenacious patch of Himalayan blackberry, a thought strikes me, clear and sharp as a freshly honed pruning shear. Maybe this is my new calling. Not bulldozing, per se, but direct action, problem-solving, cutting through the thorny overgrowth of bureaucratic nonsense. Perhaps, after my macrame-induced enlightenment, I'll look into advanced knot-tying techniques. Could be useful for, say, creatively and non-destructively securing an improperly parked vehicle to a very sturdy, very immovable lamppost. Progress, not perfection, as Chloe would say. And who knows? Maybe there's a market for a consultant specializing in aggressively diplomatic neighborhood dispute resolution. I'd have to work on the business cards.